All right, ladies and gentlemen, time to get excited. It is now confirmed, the previously leaked Nintendo Direct that would be taking place on a Friday, an unusual day. Shoutouts to Switch Force. He absolutely nailed this one. Shoutouts to Nate the Hate corroborating it and backing it up. Nash Weedle and Attack the Backlog both straight on with this one as well. And we have here the official post from Nintendo of America. Join us on September 12th at 6 a.m. Pacific time for a Nintendo Direct. Tune in for roughly 60 minutes of information on upcoming Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch games. This is the big one, ladies and gentlemen, and 60 minutes is a full-on presentation. That is as long as we had them go live for the reveal of the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware, which had a lot of just hardware overview trailers. We shouldn't have to look at any hardware overview trailers, which leads me to believe, and this is in my predictions, but this is likely including Mario's 40th anniversary celebration as well. So not only should we expect major first-party announcements that we don't have today, but yeah, I think Mario is going to be here too. And those prior reports that suggested maybe they were looking at doing a separate Mario Direct and decided to merge it into the full mainline Direct, that leads more credence to that idea now that we're seeing a 60-minute time slot. We normally see 40 minutes, 45 minutes, occasionally 50 minutes, but a full hour-long presentation with all fresh new Nintendo announcements. This is exciting, so definitely tune in live with me here. I will be streaming it on the channel, and we don't have to wait any longer for the September presentation. This is going to outline the rest of Nintendo's holiday season and into 2026. So obviously a big win for fans and something we can come together and enjoy. Now, the next and possibly more exciting part of this video, now that we know we are getting a full-scale mainline Nintendo Direct, is what games should we expect to see there? And I want to first start off with the obvious picks, the ones that we already know are headed to Nintendo Switch 2, officially announced, and they're just poised to show up with new information like release dates for many of these games that we know will be coming out through the remainder of 2025 and 2026. And Nintendo actually has quite a few different games out there to get through on this front. So past that, we'll talk about the leaked and rumored games and everything we can see potentially from a first and third party perspective that is unannounced. But first off, Metroid Prime 4, we're going to get the release date. That is the number one safest and most probable prediction out of anything you are going to see in the rest of this video. It is pretty clear to me that Metroid Prime 4 will get its release date here. The worst case scenario would be Nintendo making some kind of surprise announcement that this game has been pushed to 2026. I do not believe that. In all of their recent investor briefings and everything like that, they have not moved the hard commitment of a 2025 launch time for this game. And if you're looking at the calendar halfway through the month of September, we don't got much time left this year. So I am predicting an end of October, early to mid-November launch, probably on the earlier side of November. Yes, Nintendo could slot it in as an early December game, but I really think that this is going to be more of the big marquee holiday title for the Switch 1 family of systems. Because while, of course, a lot of us who bought a Switch 2 will no doubt pick up this game for Nintendo Switch 2 with the Switch 2 edition, this is still the big holiday seller for the Switch 1 if you haven't upgraded to the Switch 2. And while Kirby Air Riders will probably be at this event as well, and we know that's going to be a November 20th release date, Nintendo still has to support their 150 plus million unit install base for the original Nintendo Switch, and that's where Prime 4 comes into that conversation. So I can actually see Nintendo doubling up in the month of October or November. I'm thinking November. I'm leaning towards early November as the most likely time frame for this game, but it's going to show up here and we're going to get the date. We will likely also receive the exact launch date of Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, which so far we know is confirmed to be a winter launch time game. So that could technically mean January 2026, but it could also mean it's the December game, and that's where my mindset is at. In fact, we had, I believe, an Australian trailer go live for this game, and it said it was launching spring, which over there is September through November. So that does actually lead into the idea that maybe a late November or more likely early December launch that's still in that general timeline that would potentially be considered spring over in Australia probably makes the most sense, and that's kind of what I'm leaning towards here with this one. We've seen a good couple looks at this game and one of those kind of ask the developer more in-depth trailers for it, but we're probably going to get a pretty hype lore and action combo trailer once again, and at the end of it, just that closeout with the exact date of when this game will be playable and in our hands. And you may have forgotten about it because Nintendo only revealed this game once on the Nintendo Today app and then moved along. But Splatoon Raiders, a major spin-off in the Splatoon franchise, that is a game that we know is headed to Nintendo Switch 2. We don't know when it's coming out, and I actually think that there's a high likelihood that Nintendo has that game show up here in some capacity and probably gives us, if not a launch date, at least a launch time. Maybe they just throw a 2026 title screen on there for now, but I actually think this game could get a date, and it could be something like a January or February game for next year. As you know, we typically don't see the first direct of the next year until something like February, so oftentimes we will learn about a January or February game in these fall time directs for Nintendo, at least historically speaking. So yes, Splatoon Raiders has a solid shot of being here, and I think we'll learn quite a bit more about what the gameplay loop is going to look like for the Splatoon series spinoff. Tomodachi Life Living the Dream is a Switch 1 game that will no doubt get a Switch 2 edition, I'm sure, as well. We actually haven't seen this game since March of 2025, and Nintendo has been radio silent on it since then. It's a big deal for a core section of Nintendo's fan base. I'm not the biggest fan of the Tomodachi Life games, but no doubt a lot of people were excited for this to hit the platform. I think we're going to get communication from Nintendo on it as well, and it could be one of those early January or February games as well. And maybe, just maybe, we actually see the exact launch date. If not, maybe just an updated trailer and once again a 2026 title card at the end of it. We briefly mentioned Kirby Air Riders, but I do think that's going to be here. It's out November 20th, and Pokemon Legends ZA is out October 16th, and I do believe that that will be here as well, with probably a more detailed, updated trailer with maybe a glimpse of a lot of different aspects of the game, like the multiplayer battle mode that we learned about recently, in addition to just some more highlights of capturing Pokemon throughout the city, the battle system being real time, and highlighting all of the core gameplay loop mechanics in this one. Once again, I could definitely see that being a likely candidate to show up in this direct. Elden Ring will absolutely be here with a release date. I think you can pretty much take that to the bank. It's another title just as likely as Metroid to show up, because we know it's 2025. We know it's Switch 2 bound. There have been some kind of concerning reports in terms of this game's performance, with a lot of the hands-on demos that were available at PAX West and then Gamescom before it. It does seem like maybe PAX West had a more updated version of the demo that was not running as bad as those initial reports that we saw, which just claimed the game was essentially unplayable and going down to like 15 frames per second dips at certain points in time. It doesn't seem like we're having to worry about it being quite that bad, but it also is not going to be like a smooth locked 30 FPS, at least not right now. FromSoft is known to kind of launch their games in a little bit of a rougher state, not broken or anything like that, but they have frame dips sometimes that do end up getting patched out over the course of time. And there's actually also the chance that, of course, they iron all this stuff out before the game is actually released, and that would obviously be a way better case scenario, because you don't want to buy anything that technically isn't ready day one. I mean, if this game needs more time, just give it more time. But here's hoping FromSoft can iron out some of the performance stuff, but it's going to be here, and we're going to get an exact release date, in my opinion. Something like a October or November date makes a lot of sense for this game as well, in my opinion, because it's going to be a big holiday game in Nintendo's lineup. Even though it's third party, a lot of Nintendo fans that exclusively play on Nintendo hardware have been waiting to play Elden Ring, and it's finally here. It's the Tarnished Edition with all of the DLC packed in, likely still sold at a $70 price, which is actually a great value considering how much DLC and content's in this game. The base game, 100 hours plus easy alone if you're not doing crazy new game plus over and over, and then you get another 40 hours plus out of the DLC easy. And I'm talking like you could go further than that if you wanted to, but you know, even if you were just sticking to the main objectives, I would say between the DLC and the main game, you're probably clocking in close to 100 total combined. So this one's a no-brainer for FromSoft fans, and finally making its way to Nintendo Switch 2. Final Fantasy VII Remake, a game that we don't have to worry about the performance of near as much, because all things considered, everything we've seen about this game so far, it has been universally praised with how good it looks, how well it runs, and I think that this will be here with an exact release date. Also, anytime for as soon as early October into December, anytime in that window, I think this game's coming out. Definitely holiday time window, probably more October, November than waiting till December, but that one's right around the corner and we should learn about it. The Duskbloods maybe this shows up here, maybe it doesn't. FromSoft could be planning this earlier into 2026, in which case I think if it's launching anytime as soon as like March, it would likely show up at this event and potentially have a release date alongside of that. If it is later into 2026 than March, I actually think that we're going to see it maybe at the early year Nintendo Direct in February, as opposed to it being here at the September presentation. So kind of a coin flip on this one, but nonetheless, a big Nintendo announced title that I think will also be at this presentation. Okay, we're going to now shift over to a lot of the leaked and rumored games that could potentially show up here. These are not guaranteed, but there is some reason to believe that these games exist and could be in the presentation. And we have to kick this off from a first party perspective. We'll dive into the third party stuff as well. But if you've been around on this channel for a while, you probably know where I'm starting, and that is Metroid Prime 2 and 3 HD Remastered. We got Prime 1 HD Remastered all the way back in 2023 as a shadow drop announcement at the February Direct, and we had a physical edition come out shortly there afterwards. I believe this will be handled in a similar fashion where it actually would be the September game. I think that, you know, Nintendo's missing a September game in their release calendar right now, and that's typically a pretty big month for them. I actually think there's some reason to believe that this might not also be the only September game, as weird as that sounds. But yes, this is truly the last opportunity for these projects to show up in the lead up to Metroid Prime 4 as part of their marketing cycle. I truly don't think Nintendo brings these over after Prime 4 releases, other than as NSO titles down the line. So that would mean that if there's any hope for an HD remaster of these games, it has to be here. We've heard rumors of these all the way back, stemming back as far as pre-Prime 1 announcement. And some people thought it would be a trilogy. It was pretty clear from Jeff Grubb and other sources that had heard about it from a while back that probably Prime 1 was getting the bigger and more in-depth treatment, and 2 and 3 were also projects, but they were going to be maybe a little bit simpler in scope, not maybe quite as advanced in the visual department. I still think they're getting the quality of life upgrades like controls and modernized controls, things like that, widescreen support obviously, and probably just a HD overhaul, but they might be more akin to something like Pikmin 1 and 2, where we also saw Nintendo kind of bring those over last minute in the lead up to Pikmin 4. I'm picturing the same thing for Prime 2 and 3, and I certainly hope that they are here. We just talked about recently on the channel Necro Felipe and multiple other Pokemon inside sources talking about some kind of unannounced Pokemon spin-off game that would be announced in the month of September. And Necro Felipe straight up said it would be at the Direct. So I do believe that we have a solid shot of potentially seeing some unannounced Pokemon content here. We don't know if this is going to be an exciting Pokemon spinoff, maybe a Pokken tournament once again, maybe mystery dungeon or something weird like that that comes back, or if this could be, you know, something like as silly as like a mobile / current gen game like Cafe Remix or whatever else Pokemon Company has going on. Like we don't know if this will be exciting or not, but it should potentially be here. And while I don't want to get my hopes up for this one, there is an outstanding rumor of a Zelda Ocarina of Time remake, and this comes to us from Nash Weedle, and we also have had some interesting teases over time from Mr. Aonuma in interviews, where he has this track record of kind of teasing certain projects that are being worked on and saying no comment, whereas other times he will shut down certain projects that aren't going on, and he's kind of been doing this with Ocarina of Time, laughing at the idea and saying no comment that maybe they're working on some kind of a remake. And then of course we also have him referencing Rauru, a big central character in Ocarina of Time, in terms of fans nowadays not knowing the importance of that character, because obviously where Ocarina of Time was from a sales perspective and an established Zelda franchise as a whole back then compared to where it's at now in the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom era, two completely different timelines. And I do think there's the smallest chance that maybe something like this would be teased as even a potential show closer. Like an Ocarina of Time remake from the ground up with great visuals would absolutely break the internet. But again, while I want this to be here, it is not one that I feel confident in saying will absolutely be here. But I do think that by next year, if this is a real project, it would be the likely time to learn about it, and we will have Zelda's 40th anniversary happening in 2026. So you can never say never for Zelda, and I do think it's coming at some point on the Switch 2, a new Zelda project, probably a port or remaster first, because obviously, you know, it takes a lot of time to create the main new 3D Zelda games. But yes, there is the smallest hope and possibility that Ocarina of Time is here in sub capacity. we obviously have this outstanding rumor that Nintendo's going to, and not just rumor, but also you look at their history, Nintendo's probably going to celebrate Mario's 40th anniversary. And I don't know if it's in this direct or if it's its own separate presentation, but it has me thinking the fact that we haven't heard anything about Mario's 40th yet and the timing of when this presentation is going live. In fact, the official anniversary would be on the next day, September 13th. I personally believe we might see a section of this direct that is dedicated to Mario's 40th. Maybe it's kind of clear cut and concise and not as long of a presentation as what we saw for the 35th anniversary, because that was during 2020 and Nintendo didn't really know what was going to go on or happen in their release lineup schedule when everything was currently being shut down around the world. So no doubt they had to pivot and make some last minute decisions, and maybe just a 15-minute stretch or even 10 minutes or less of some Mario focused announcements, and they kind of just do the big 40th celebration as part of this direct. That might make more sense. And the rumored games we have for, well, really just one major rumored game so far for the 40th comes to us from Special Nick, who has leaked inside information like the price point and the bundle options being spot on for Nintendo Switch 2. They have claimed that they have heard about a Galaxy 2 HD remaster. I'm here for it personally. Now, this will be kind of interesting to see how Nintendo markets this one, because we saw them do the whole 3D All-Stars collection, 3 games in one, Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy 1, all as part of a standard price $60 game collection for the Switch 1. So they would have to either maybe bring that back and add Galaxy 2 in as part of like a Switch 2 edition and get some visual upgrades and stuff like that, or how they would probably do it is give a little bit more attention to detail and give it a better visual and lighting system overhaul and stuff like that, and sell this as a standalone game that I still think would probably be Switch 1 and Switch 2 available. Like, I think we'll probably get a Switch 2 edition for $10 more, and we'll have a Switch 1 edition of this game launch as well. But yeah, this is one of those games that I think could also be a September title. It's time to celebrate Mario's 40th. Nintendo historically does the 5-year anniversaries every time for Mario, and I think he'll be here in some capacity. There's also, just throwing these in here, there's also the possibility, we've seen some renders recently, brand new, of Donkey Kong looking set for like a baseball type of environment. It's very possible that there's going to be a Mario baseball game announced, or some kind of Mario sports game, at least at the bare minimum, as part of the celebration as well, in addition to some movie details and some different merchandise that Nintendo will do, kind of limited time celebration style. And then whenever we talk about third party, there is a ton of different possibilities here, but some of the more recent rumored ones are Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. One, we have Switch Force, who obviously has checked out at this point in time with their track record, teasing 3 games with 7 in the title card or somehow related to 7. And then turns out later on, we got some teases from Nash Weedle and Attack the Backlog that Resident Evil 7 Biohazard would be showing up at the next Nintendo Direct. I think that's one of those 7 game teases from Switch Force. Then we also got some reports that suggest all RE Engine games, basically all the cloud editions, and then some Resident Evil 4 as well. They'll all ultimately make their way over to Switch 2, but I don't think they're all here at this presentation as some kind of blowout announcement for the Resident Evil franchise. I think it's more likely to see Biohazard announced here and the rest of those games coming later on. Then moving on from there, Far Cry 7's another recent one that popped up in the rumor mill conversation. It's tied to that 7 type of leak thing, and I think that Final Fantasy 7 Remake being one of those 7 games, maybe that's the 3rd game in there, and that could be at this event. Xbox, they're going to be there in a big way. They still have a ton of games they're working on bringing to Switch 2, no doubt. Many of them we've seen either teased or leaked from reputable sources over time. And you have Sea of Thieves, Halo Master Chief Collection. We already have seen Indiana Jones and the Great Circle get confirmed. We'll probably maybe see that show up here. Maybe a more exact release time window, potentially. Forza Horizon has some rumors about it coming over. Ninja Gaiden 4. Call of Duty, we know is coming at some point. That could be 6 or 7 to start off, but maybe it's at this event. Diablo 4, Doom the Dark Ages, Hellblade 2, and even Oblivion Remastered. Like, Xbox can either go all out, or they could be here at some level, but not really announce all their big pending stuff. I'm still holding out some hope for some more FromSoft content, maybe Night Rain or Dark Souls 2 and 3, maybe just release the trilogy of the Dark Souls games, get them all on Switch 2, stuff like that I think could possibly be here. We also saw Assassin's Creed Shadows rated a while back for the Nintendo Switch 2, and Nash Weedle had previously leaked that game would be coming over to the platform, so the fact that we got the ratings after he teased that, I think that's going to be a prime candidate to show up at this event. So obviously, tons of different games to potentially look forward to. It is time to get hyped. This is the big one that we've been waiting for. The first major full-scale Nintendo Direct since we've had the console launch. I personally can't wait for it, but that's where I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What do you expect to see at this upcoming presentation, and what out of the list of games that we talked about today would you be most excited to see, and which ones that we didn't mention would you also think are likely, or maybe have some outstanding leaks and rumors around them that make you think that they will show up at this presentation? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.